said, my name is Nick Hurdle. I'm a senior SDE who's been with the Database Migration Service for a little while now. And I'm going to give you a little introduction to how to use the Schema Conversion Tool and the Database Migration Service to migrate your data from Oracle into Amazon Aurora. So when migrating your database to the cloud, you need to do more than just change the location. You leverage the power of the cloud. Customers appreciate the flexibility that platforms like EC2 offer, and they do many of the great things that you would expect. But RDS takes it to another level. You'll see RDS supports multiple engines. It supports a lot of automation around the provisioning and the management of the database. It includes a high availability option that we call multi-AZ with 99.95% uptime SLA. One of the engines that's supported within RDS is called Aurora. This is a database that is compatible with MySQL, so if your application is already using MySQL, it'll work against Aurora without any compatibility adjustment needs. It also has the speed and availability of the high-end commercial databases that you may be used to. And it's very simple to use within RDS. Same pay-as-you-go pricing model as the other database engines. And again, like all the other database engines that RDS supports, it's included in the managed service. So all those things like adding storage or changing compute power or configuring the durability settings, all those changes can be made with a few clicks of the button on the management console rather than needing to design, implement, test your own solutions. So which customers are moving to Aurora? We have one category of customers who are already using MySQL engines. They're switching because it offers a higher performance, up to 5 times faster. This is a cloud-optimized version, cloud-optimized compatibility with MySQL. It has better availability and durability. Instead of using sort of machines for the cloud with the software installed, it's designed from the ground up to be a cloud version of the database. We've seen customers reduce their costs by up to 60% when they switch to Aurora, and there's really easy migration, especially when you're moving from an existing MySQL database. Now, if you're using a commercial engine, we see even bigger cost savings because you can eliminate some of the license costs that are associated with those commercial engines. You get really comparable performance and availability, and there are some migration tools available to switch over into Aurora. Now, let's talk a little bit more about that actual migration path. Customers have questions. How does their data get there? How do I make this so customers don't even notice? How do I make sure that all the different systems are interacting with the data in the right place at the right time? And especially, how do I get from the commercial database into the more performant, less expensive Aurora? There's some trade-offs here. Customers are worried about application downtime. They're worried about some of the database engine-specific code that's in their application. These migrations can be expensive to set up and manage, especially when you're using some of these licensed migration tools. We saw these concerns and questions and problems, and we wanted to address that. So there are a number of ways to migrate to Aurora. The Schema Conversion Tool and DMS can help with all 3 scenarios, but in this session, we're going to talk specifically about moving from Oracle into RDS Aurora. So to get into more detail now on our solution, we'll talk a little bit about what are DMS and SCT. So The schema conversion tool is kind of the starting point where you can use it to generate a compatible schema for the target engine based on your source database. And then the Database Migration Service does the actual movement of the data into that prepared schema. When do you use this? DMS and SCT can help you modernize, migrate, and replicate. Now, on the modernize side, we're talking about moving from an older school engine into the newer situation like Amazon Aurora. You'll see on the data warehouse side of things, we also offer some migration from some of the traditional data warehousing solutions into Amazon Redshift. We're not going to get into detail on that right now, but we have all kinds of options for using these tools to get your data into the right AWS tool. On the migration side, when you're looking at moving data from A to B, whether it's on-premise to the cloud or between EC2 and RDS, between database engines, you got a lot of different ways you might be moving it. When you're looking at the replication, it's important to make sure that after the initial data is moved, you're keeping it in sync. And DMS has some good functionality included that helps to handle the ongoing replication or the catch-up before beginning to use your new data. So we recently have included some additional data extractors to get data out of your data warehouse through the schema conversion tool and into Amazon Redshift. This is a little bit more of maybe a subject for a whole different conversation, but the point here is to show that the schema conversion tool has a lot of different uses. On the one hand, it can be helpful for migrating from Oracle into Aurora, but also here's sort of a little graphic that shows how it can be used to move your data warehouses into Amazon Redshift as well. So here's some of the reasons why customers are choosing to use these tools. We make it simpler, effectively removing barriers to entry. I've had a lot of customers talk about, oh, we really like these new features that RDS is offering. How do I migrate to use these new RDS features? Aurora being one great example. And the common answer for quite a while was, gosh, that's really complicated. It's best for new solutions. And now with DMS and Schema Conversion Tool, we're removing that barrier, and we're making it easier for customers that want zero downtime, secure, easy migration of existing systems into AWS. We're making that easy. At the same time, we're allowing DB freedom. Not only do we allow customers to move their data from on-premise into the cloud, but also from a more expensive enterprise licensed engine into one that has similar performance characteristics at a much lower price. Now, what are customers saying? We've had a lot of customers do this already, and there's some examples here of some big customers that have some good things to say about their experiences using DMS and SCT. I hesitate to read through this entirely. I can point out a couple things that I thought were really exciting. At the bottom there, where Expedia says, the ease by which we can do this using the AWS Database Migration Service has simplified this process for us and enabled us to accelerate our migration efforts. So a lot of these companies, to summarize here, were trying to migrate, but they were finding it complicated and they were finding it slow going. And with these tools, we're seeing customers really excited about how quickly and easily they can do these migrations. So how does it work? Let's get into some detail. I talked earlier about how the first step is the schema conversion tool side of things. It's important to get the target schema set up first. And the second step is to actually move the data, the rows, the the details, the actual information into that new schema using the Database Migration Service. Step 1 and Step 2. So the first step in any migration is to move your schema. If you're doing a homogeneous migration, there's a range of tools available to help with this, including the Schema Conversion Tool. If you're doing a heterogeneous migration, the Schema Conversion Tool can tell you how much work it will be to convert your schema. And if you don't have a set preference, it will recommend the best target database engine. So some customers will analyze an Oracle database and discover that there's other suggestions for the target database they choose. Again, in this case, we're going to be talking about Aurora, but each customer will make their own choice. Now, the Schema Conversion Tool does a lot of different things. It looks at sequences, user-defined types, this whole list. Again, I'm not going to read the whole list, but these are things that don't really count as the data, as it were. These aren't rows in tables. These aren't the bulk of the content of your database. They're more or less the structure. And these structural pieces are the pieces that the Schema Conversion Tool helps with. So here we'll take a look. Let's explore how it is that DMS can actually enable a near zero downtime migration. Now, the customer starts by launching a DMS instance in their AWS account. You see it fly in there. Now, the customer will provide database connection information to connect out to the on-premise database and in to the AWS database. Next, the customer will select which tables, schemas, or databases they want to migrate, and DMS will load the data, keep it in sync on an ongoing basis. Finally, at the end of the migration, at the time of the customer's choosing, they can simply change the application to point at the new AWS database instead of the old on-premise database. In a traditional model, there may have been a much longer downtime without the benefit of this ongoing application. So the loading occurs table by table. It creates the tables on the target database, sets up the metadata required on the target database, populates the data from the source, and each process loads one entire table. You can use multiple processes. You can configure all this based on task settings. It can be paused. When you resume and restart it, it continues from where it stopped. With one exception, if any tables were in progress, it needs to start a partially migrated table from scratch. It still saves a lot of time if you have a bunch of completed tables. Talk a little bit more about the change data capture. Each database engine has different ways to track transactions as they occur. With Oracle, there's a setting called supplemental logging that you turn on. For MySQL, it would be row level bin logging. For SQL Server, you would turn on bulk logged full recovery. For Postgres, you have to have wall logs. In all these cases, it's really just a different name for the same concept of the transaction logs that are occurring as commits are received. That data that the database engine generates is pulled in by the replication instance and used to apply those changes after the bulk load is complete. So what else can I do? What are some other benefits here? By now, it should be pretty obvious that data can move from A to B, and many have used DMS to do just that. Some customers have been pretty ingenious with DMS and have fanned in or consolidated systems. DMS will put data where you ask it to. So if you want to merge data from a number of legacy systems into a single place to save money for other different reasons, DMS can help with this. Remember, DMS can just as easily move data between like databases and unlike databases. So you can take information from a number of different platforms and consolidate it into a single cloud database. So for example, if some of your databases are Oracle and some of them are MySQL and some of them are using Postgres, they could all fan into a single Aurora database to simplify your systems if that's what your business needs. Now, on the other hand, in addition to fanning in and consolidating, some customers have instead fanned out, where they need to scale and take different pieces of an existing database and run them on independent individual systems, again, for maybe scaling reasons or for design simplicity. Every system is different, and the bonus here is that with DMS and Schema Conversion Tool, you can really slice and dice your data into different pieces, fan it out, fan it in, whatever your business needs. Some organizations have many years of historical data, old stuff that you don't need anymore, or maybe certain types of data that you want to be selectively excluding. We have a concept called filtering that can be done as part of the migration that will use any rules, not just dates, to help select which data gets included in the migration. So I've spent a little bit of time here talking through what this stuff does. I want to give you an actual example here. We're going to show how the Schema Conversion Tool can be used to do one of these such migrations. First step you'll see is you select you want a new project, give it a name. Here we're calling it My Demo for simplicity. You'll see that the source database is Oracle, and we're going to change the target to Aurora, which is MySQL compatible. First steps here to get things going is you need to actually connect to the databases. We'll connect first to the Oracle database. That would be our source. And you see it shows the list of schemas on the left there. And now we'll be connecting to the target, Amazon Aurora database. And that's going to show up on the right. In this case, we're going to be using the DMS sample schema. And to begin with, we'll create a report. This is sort of, I mentioned this earlier on one of those slides where I talked about it gives you an idea of how complicated this migration will be, what some of the things that require manual attention before the migration might be. It's analyzing all those structural pieces. And here you'll see there's a little bit of a summary there to give you a rundown on what's going on, as well as a little bit more detail on, for example, here you'll see there's 5 sequences in this Oracle database. And since MySQL doesn't include sequences, there needs to be a little bit of attention to make things migrate properly. Here you'll see with the target database selected, it highlights the issues that need attention. Some of these can be, in some cases, ignored. In other cases, they require a little bit of planning to ensure that the migration is going to work for your application on the new engine. Here you'll see a look at how some of these things line up. The warnings right there. There's some code comparison for one of the stored procedures that got converted from the Oracle version of the procedure to the MySQL version of the procedure. So these are oftentimes time-consuming, complicated processes that this tool handles for you. Now we're applying these changes and going to go ahead, convert now over to the DMS. I'm not sure if you saw that, but we clicked on the DMS tab of the AWS console. We're going to create a replication instance. Now some of this is sped up a little bit to make it easy to include in a video here. The creation of the instance and some of these verification steps can sometimes take a few minutes, but you'll see there very quickly moves from creating to available. Next thing we need is endpoints. Now these endpoints, the databases already exist. You're not creating databases here. You're just specifying the metadata so that the replication software knows how to contact the configured Oracle and Aurora databases. So we're just putting in the connection information, telling it which VPC to use, verifying connectivity. We're going to save that setting, and go on to do the same thing for the Aurora database. In this case, it'll be a target. We do use MySQL as the target for DMS, even though it's Aurora, because they're compatible. We're going to run a connectivity test here. And it worked. So we can go ahead and move on, save this. And the next thing we're going to need is a task. The task, again, is all metadata. It defines the actual configuration for the migration. You specify which replication instance you want to use, which source and target endpoints you want to use. We selected to use change data capture for ongoing replication. Enabled logging. That's not on by default, but we recommend it for most customers, especially those getting started, wanting more information about what's going on. We're going to create the selection rules. Chose the same schema that we were manipulating with the conversion tool. And we're even putting in an exclude rule to demonstrate how the filters work. So now that the task has been created and started, you'll see that it's running. We include some statistics that indicate how things are going. You'll see there's a bunch of full loaded rows, which is the second, well, the column with big numbers in it. Each of those tables on the left has a different value. You'll see that it's progressing as time goes on, more and more rows are completing. And then that one highlighted in red, 431, is tracking the inserts that are occurring while the migration occurs. See, it just went up, 1371. And this is all being tracked by what we call change data capture, so that by the time it's 100% complete, we've handled all 7,155 inserts that occurred during the migration, and they're automatically applied to that target database after the bulk initial load completed. So that's the conclusion of this video, or actually, did I speak too soon? Went dark. I swear there was something else in there. Ed, is that the end of the video? Okay, that's the end. I'm confused. Let's move on to the next slides. This is a link to where you can get some of the samples and recipes. I gave this demo. It looked really sweet. Sometimes it's easier to get started with some simple data to get a better feel for how things work before you move into actually using your own potentially more complicated data. So here's a place that you can go to take a look at this information. Now, obviously, some fine print. Let's get into some of the pricing here and some of the more details of the selections that you have when you're using DMS. We have two different classes of EC2 instances that we run these migrations on. The T2s are best for just trying it out. If you're trying to learn how it works, you want to keep costs to a minimum, or you're doing a really small migration that doesn't need a lot of power, T2s are great. But they use shared CPU model, which reduces the efficiency. C4s can actually end up being cheaper if you're doing a really intensive, CPU-intensive migration, because you get a lot more done, which means that you pay for less hours. We've got some detailed pricing here, but of course it differs in each region. Things change over time, so if you really want to know the details, I encourage you to check the pricing page on the AWS DMS webpage online. We do have 50 gigabytes of GP2 storage included at no additional cost for the T2s, and double that, 100 at no cost for the C4s. Data transfer within, inbound and within an AZ is free, and then across AZs ends up being 1 cent per gigabyte. There's some calculating tools available on the AWS website to put in some of these numbers and figure out what your expected migration costs might be. Now, I want to get started. What do I do? What resources are available? Okay, so when you log into the console, you'll see There's the DMS dashboard. It includes links to how to get started, documentation, some more information than the overview that I'm giving here. There's some important highlights, overview features. This is where the pricing link is that I mentioned on the previous slide. If you have questions that don't get addressed today, there is a public forum that allows you to ask more questions, and they're actively monitored by the same folks that are here in the room today. You can download the AWS Java SDK, which allows you to put some automation behind your migration plans. If you're going to do a lot of really similar migrations, instead of visiting the console and clicking on things over a very long period of time, you could do a little bit of coding and automate this with the RSDK. Furthermore, if you'd rather use a command line sort of in between the SDK and the GUI, there is that option as well. So if you're looking to learn more about the Schema Conversion Tool, there's a download link for downloading that. The Schema Conversion Tool is not a part of the web-provided API-backed service. It is something that's downloaded and installed. It supports different platforms, Linux, Windows, Mac. There's information here on how to install it, and we have a separate forum link there for how to get more questions answered about the Schema Conversion Tool. So we've got a lot of people helping with this, a lot of database migration partners. Just showing a list here. Take a good look at that. Thank you for your attention.